welcome. I am really excited today because we get to talk about women's gynecological health, but mostly sexual health, right? So I have Victoria Eisenhower. Hopefully I pronounced that correct.
Eicenhower.
Yeah, okay, good. Right on, Eisenhower. And she is a sex coach. Yes?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
okay. I would love you to share with us tell us a little bit about you, what you do, what's your area of expertise, what are you known for?
Yeah. So I actually go by the title self-love scientist
Yes, I
because
love it.
my expertise covers not just sex itself, but I'm a huge advocate for self-love. So learning to cultivate a relationship with yourself so that you can, reclaim your power back, which redefines the relationships you have. And inside that same boat, as we're redefining your relationships, you're also creating a new mindset towards words like intimacy and partnership and feminine and masculine. So I get to help individuals create this new level of confidence because they're able to recognize who they are and like their worthiness and like what they actually bringing themselves to the table so that they can attract the partners they want, or if they're currently in relationships they can see the improvements that they've been looking for.
I love that. Can you define maybe what intimacy is? Because I think it can mean a lot of different things for people. There's physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, mental intimacy. How do you see intimacy, and why is it so important to cultivate, even if we're not in a romantic relationship at the moment?
That's a very good question. And you're absolutely right. It's just like the way we look at the word sex. There's so many ways we look at it. The way I look at intimacy, and you said if we're even not in a romantic relationship. So would you say maybe being intimate with yourself, or just when you think of intimacy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So intimacy is it's a deeper, more profound relationship experience that is something that in the moment it's meeting your needs and wants while also your partner's needs and wants at the same time. So it establishes a connection. Now, this connection can be short, this connection can be long. And again, it's not just something that happens in the bedroom, actually. This can be something that looks like cooking dinner together. It could be when you're walking and holding hands. It could be sitting in the space, like if you're sitting outside and no words are being said. In that moment, though, if you really think about it, how good does that feel to be with that person? And one of the common words I hear amongst my clients is, I want to have trust, or I just want him to trust me, or I want to trust her. So intimacy is a foundation of trust where you get to show up authentically, you feel safe, and you know, there is some erotic, euphoric feeling there. Like, we don't have to be, having sex in that moment. But when you're cooking and you're just, you're putting your shields down, right? You're taking the armor off and you don't even realize it until the moment is over. And you're like, oh, wow. I'm like that phrase, I'm not like this with anyone else. That's intimacy.
I love that. That's beautiful. Before I met my partner, I was single after divorce for close to a decade, and mostly by choice.
Mhm.
Um, it was, I really began to, for the first time in my life, really like who I was, and I started to like my own company, and I liked being alone, but I liked being with friends and family, and just sort of figuring out who I was after so many years. And I didn't actually think I would open up to a person again. I was actually a little not concerned, but I was like, it'll be surprising to me if I feel just as comfortable with someone in my bedroom as I do at home alone. And that's exactly what has happened is it's so incredible now to think about that. And I say that we say that to each other a lot. It's like it's so effortless and it's
Mm.
so free, and it's such a beautiful feeling. So I think, and I'm just thinking out loud about my own experience, but it was almost like that learning to get intimate with myself. in many different ways, allowed me to find the type of person I would want to be intimate with together. It was an interesting journey for me. So it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. How did
Absolutely.
you? Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you're fine. I was gonna say, I'm really glad you shared that. I think that was
Thank you. Thank you. I had to love me because I really didn't, but I now I do.
that
Yeah.
part.
Yes. Are you willing to share a little bit about your story? So, how did you come into this line of practice as a self-love scientist and a sex coach? Is a lot of us go into these practices because of personal stories as well as, professional endeavors. What is your story?
Oh, it was personal.
Oh.
It was so personal.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing, we'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very glad to share. And to be honest with you, I in a nutshell, and I think this is going to touch on a lot of folks, but we're in 2024. 2.5 years ago, I didn't even love myself.
Oh.
Like I didn't know what love was. The love I've experienced now is just, I'm sorry, I'm gonna tear up.
It's
But
so, I know, right?
it's so wild. Like the love I've experienced today is just has been amazing. However, at that moment, that 2.5 years ago, and this is to say, like it wasn't, anybody else. It was everything that I was allowing in my life, and
Yeah.
it's because I didn't recognize that the life I got to live was for me. I was kind of satisfying everyone else around me. And when it came to, I had the American dream. I was at a house, was married with the dogs, and the next step was, to have kids. And I was, trying to figure out like, why am I not pregnant? Why is this not working? And when I started diving deeper into, sexual health, I learned about masturbating, I learned about self-pleasure, and I started recognizing the differences that I felt in my body when I was with my partner at the time.
Hmm.
And I started really getting into, just human connection in general. And I started recognizing, I was like, whoa, I am holding on to a lot of limiting beliefs. I'm holding on to a lot of trauma and expectations that were kind of given to me at a young age. And I realized that the life I had built up was not my life. And the person I was with was not no longer someone I wanted to be with. And in that moment, it was, do I stay to satisfy the masses? Or do I, really trust this? I had this like really like profound, like it was very difficult because in the back of my mind, it was always there. Like, it's time to go. You need to go. Like, what do you have to lose? And so eventually I made the decision and went through the divorce process. And that meant walking away from everything I built for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And along that journey, I like found myself more involved with, I couldn't let myself feel like that again. I never wanted to hurt anyone, because it sucked. It sucked to hurt this person who was a genuine, kind human. And we both said to each other, you deserve the best and I deserve the best. And it's just not working. And so I vowed to like, what do I need to do? Because I'm a hopeful romantic, not hopeless, a hopeful romantic. But I wasn't ready to, go look for my person. And instead, I spent a long time, asking myself the things, that I wanted, which is not never something I've given myself permission to. And this is actually a very common issue, especially amongst women. We just kind of grow up with the fact that like everybody around us got to be happy. And as long as they're happy, that for some reason that puts us at our, then we're worth it, but then not at the expense of my health. Like if I want like deep, profound love and intimacy, then not at the cost of this. So I started developing like routines and structures. I got really deep into, uncovering what these limiting beliefs were. And when I recognized it was just a lot of things that happened at a young age, whether it's trauma related or movie related, personal experience related, parents, all this, and the willingness to like let go, reframe them. I became just like this, extroverted, like blossoming being. Like I'm not saying that it was a great year because I was on ramen noodles like this whole year. Going from two incomes to one was tough.
Yes.
So, but when I started feeling safe to actually share my story and like what was happening, because I went quiet for a while, and then I was like, yeah, this is what's going on. I'm moving, and I'm no longer with this person. And when I talked about how important it was to, have a, intimate relationship and recognizing like how worthy I was, women were like, oh, me too, me too, me too. And what I thought was something super stigma and like taboo, like nobody wants to talk about divorce, they only want the drama. Or like if you are the woman and it's your choice, like there's a lot of like loud white noise happening when you do that. So I had a friend of mine one day they told me multiple times, but they were like, I can see you get really excited about this, and I think you should turn this into something more. What would
Mhm.
that look like? And I was like, if I can create the space and help educate and empower women, and now I say men because I've had men in my containers,
Yes.
so that they don't have to live in a life that feels disconnected or be in a relationship that's unfulfilling and thinking, well, this is what it is what it is. And it's like, no, it's not. You're limiting yourself. And
Yeah.
you deserve so much more. So, Self Love Scientist was born, and I became a certified practitioner. And I'm very grateful for the clients I've encountered, and I've made beautiful connections. As you can tell, I connected and I did a couple of talks at the PCOS con last year, and I did
Mhm.
talks this year. It's just been a really exciting adventure, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming in 2025.
I love it. I know it's such a hard time and such a beautiful time. Glennon Doyle calls it brutal, right? Like it's brutal and beautiful. And there
Mhm.
is something very both about these experiences. And it's always amazing to see when you surrender and let go, what is going to take its place, right? What is actually meant for you is going to come through, and obviously it has for you, which is really amazing because you deserve it. Everybody deserves to feel this way and have happiness and love and safety. And I really love that through that you learn a really valuable lesson that I think a lot of people are struggling with, especially women, but you mentioned men too, and that's that love is transactional, that we're only lovable when we can give, provide, do something in action. But it's not. Love, we are worthy of love just as we are. And that's part of the feminine condition too, right? The feminine is a very being type of energy, right? But it's so fascinating to me. And you mentioned too about the noise when the woman makes the decision. And it's so funny because that ties even into the PCOS and the health stuff and even the sexual intimacy, this idea that women do not know their own minds or bodies enough, that we need the counsel of everybody around us to make sure we know what we're doing. Isn't it funny? I know someone right now that is going through similar circumstances in the process of separating. And same thing, there's all these people like, are you sure? Like, have you thought about the consequences? Of course we have. Like, we know, right? And it's the same thing even with sexual health. Are you sure you're not doing what it takes to have an orgasm? It's all this questioning, isn't it? Isn't it hilarious how it all kind of ties together in a way? Like, do you see it too?
Oh, absolutely. It's, and I, you mentioned like the not necessarily policy, but the information that we're given, even as young girls, and like that's part of like my mission is to also empower the young women in these classrooms because all they're being
Children.
told is like, oh, you're gonna have a cycle, put a tampon in it or a pad, and go, just keep going. And then if you have sex, wear a condom. They don't talk about consent. They don't talk about communicating. They don't even talk about your self-worth. They make you feel gross, or
Oh,
at some point you're made to feel that way. And
yes.
the whole like when a woman finally takes ownership or steps into her power or is willing to take a chance on herself, she's questioned because she's heading in a direction that is foreign to everybody, and nobody likes change. Honey, you're going to have to stay strong because no one's going to like it. However, there are going to be people on the other side, and you're going to meet people along the way who are meant to be in your life, or at least are going to help, like people come in for a short time, people come in for a long time. And then there are tests out there, there are going to be people and experiences that test your, like you say, resilience. So,
Yeah, I love it. When people would say things like, "You've changed," I'm like, "We're supposed to. It's called evolution." Like, like, yeah,
yes.
I'm happy. I don't know why you're not. I'm not being mean to you.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are sitting in, what I would say, like the discomfort of contentment.
Hmm.
They're sitting there and they're looking around them and they're like, is this it? Is
Yeah.
this all I've got? Like, is this all like life is gonna be? And I encourage them like, no, like we gotta break through this glass ceiling because again, your potential is limitless. It's
Yeah.
you're given, and again, this is shout out to my ladies, like we're just kind of given this idea that you have to shrink yourselves in order to fit in because we all want to fit in, we all want to be seen.
Mhm.
However, the standards that they're putting out there are not your standards. So we're going to have to correct that and create your own standards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to, because you mentioned it, I sort of want to get into some of like the taboo stuff that we don't talk about, even just about women's body parts, because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't really know what all the body parts are, including women, like even ourselves. There's people that are women that have all the parts and aren't sure where they are or where they're at or what they're for. And you talked about people with PCOS, and PCOS is definitely a condition that can highlight parts of the body that may seem questionable in the public eye, such as um, discharge, excess hair, cysts, other things that can discoloration of skin in those areas, difficulty getting pregnant, even our reproductive organs don't seem to be doing what we want them to be doing. I would be love to just find out, like from your talk at the PCOS con, it was about taboos. What should we all start talking about, even if we don't have PCOS per se, but what should we all start talking about and normalizing when it comes to our bodies?
So when it comes to PCOS, and the taboo discussion came from the fact that even with your diagnosis, like even though you have PCOS, whether you're new to it or you're on this journey, that does not mean you are limited to experiencing pleasure. And
Yeah.
it's really tough because, as we know, like PCOS does cause irregular discharge. So we have a lot of dryness. There's a
Yeah.
lot of pelvic pain happening. And again, like the excess hair, all of these things that are happening, out of our control. So that's why we go, talk to your doctor, a preferred doctor. And even though you're navigating this journey, it does hinder and it creates a lot of self-doubt. It lowers your self-worth, it lowers the self-esteem, which goes down into your relationships, whether you're in partnership or seeking partnership. And what I like to talk about, like in those moments or along your journey, is, we have to flip the script. We need to reframe the way you see yourself aside from the diagnosis. So even though you have PCOS, use it as your superpower, right? Like there are alternatives, just because there's vaginal dryness, I'm like, hey, let's look at safer, more organic lubricants that you can use. Like even if you're not being intimate with someone, like it feels really great when she's lubricated. You know, there are lubricants out there that are, full of natural products. Like I use products from Australia because I can read the ingredients.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you're putting anything down there that's clean and also pretty. Like so
Yes.
I shared in the talk like just to help women recognize that even though these things are happening, it doesn't mean they have to limit themselves from experiencing pleasure. Like pleasure is still available and accessible to you. And it all starts by learning to, love yourself again with this new, like whether it's a new journey or you've been on this PCOS journey for a while. And it does start with reframing your mindset. starting to get like love your body as is. And then again, integrating moments of pleasure. And I encourage a lot of self pleasure because the more you get to understand what feels good for you, then you can better communicate that with your partners down the line because it's unfair to put a lot of pressure on your partner. Like, even if you're not feeling good, but then you're like, well, they need to make me orgasm. You can't orgasm, even if they're the best in the world. Like, it doesn't matter. Because if you get stuck in your head and you're thinking about the excess hair growth, you're thinking about, I should have been at the gym today, or you're experiencing pain, but you don't know how to say something because you don't, there are a lot of fears and a lot of shame that's circling around in your mind. Therefore, the mind chatter is disconnecting your pleasure chatter.
Yeah, like when it comes to sex and intimacy, I think it's good to have a understanding that there's not a goal. Like the experience itself is also amazing, right? Like we put so much pressure on ourselves and yeah, it's we do have to be relaxed. That can be more difficult for sure. But how how would you encourage maybe a woman especially that maybe has struggled with the idea of pleasure for herself? What would you want women to know about pleasure?
That's a great question. If you are a woman and you're struggling with pleasure, or maybe this is a foreign word, because I promise you, if you were to ask me, like, what's your pleasure, or what does pleasure mean to you 2.5 years ago, I'd be like, what does that even mean?
I like ice cream. I like
What are
ice
you
cream.
talking about?
Yeah.
What do you mean orgasm?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, any woman who feel like my first initial question is to say, what do you feel when I say the word pleasure? Like, what's coming up?
Mhm.
Where do you feel that in your body? Because some hear the word pleasure and they may, I can't answer for anyone. Most of the time, when I ask these questions, it's, people think of sexuality, they think of orgasm, they think of masturbating, and they start to create feelings of like a little bit of disgust, a little bit of guilt, some shame. And I'm here to let people know that those, you don't really believe that like about this, do you? It's just a program that, it's just something that you were exposed to. So if you're new to the pleasure game and you're very curious about it, it kind of starts by asking yourself, well, what does it mean to me first? And then what do you want it to be? Like, what do you want? How do you want to cultivate pleasure? Because again, it's just like intimacy. You don't have to feel the pressure, to go right into sex because, and also like, it's not just about sex. It's like the buildup, it's the journey, it's that's why I'm all about the self-love scientist because it's literally you're getting to know yourself more and
Mhm.
cultivating these strategies, these routines, and reframing these thought patterns so that you can live a pleasurable lifestyle. You can live an orgasmic lifestyle, like creating, not just going into the bedroom, be like, okay, I like to be spanked and I need a vibrator. Like
The
that's
checklist.
awesome. Hell
Yeah.
yeah, let's go. Um, but we can't get to that point until we start getting to know you and like
Mhm.
who do you want to be and how do you want to experience pleasure? Like to me, I take pleasure when I like on a Sunday and I make coffee and I sit and enjoy the taste of coffee. I've got this new plushy like faux rabbit rug and I put my feet on it and I'm like, like the softness, you're creating softness and I take a lot of pleasure out of that.
Yeah.
And women deserve that experience all the time. And
We
the same go for men. Like if you're listening, men, like yes, absolutely. But like women are the ones who are limiting themselves from experiencing it because deep down they feel unworthy. Deep down, this is not a concept and it's not their fault. It's just something that unfortunately is the normal, and that's why we have a gap. That's why we have a pleasure gap.
Yes, talk about the pleasure gap, please.
Yeah. Prepare yourself.
Yeah, I'm ready. We're ready.
So the pleasure gap, and this is you can Google it, you can look online, but the pleasure gap is this thinking of a graph itself, but it's the fact that women are experiencing unsatisfying sex and intimacy in partnership solely due to the fact of, poor communication. They're not setting up the boundaries, and they're also fighting a lot of shame when it comes to their sexuality. They're not being authentic enough. And again, like we talked about the whole mind and pleasure disconnection. If the women are not, if they're trapped up in their mind thinking about, do I look hot enough like I do in the movies? Or sometimes it may not even be, she might not be even thinking about herself. She might be thinking, I really don't want to sleep with him or have sex with this person, but I don't want to say no because I don't want to be alone. Therefore, they're going to put themselves in situations where they're experiencing unsatisfying sex because they don't even want to have it in the first place.
Yes.
So the gap is, just this thing that women are facing. It's about, I think, 40% of women today are experiencing unsatisfying sex.
Hmm.
And when I first read about it, it like blew my mind. And then at the same time, I felt related to that because to me, I didn't realize that I was supposed to enjoy sex. I thought I was just doing my due diligence. Like that's how I could keep my person by making them happy. And when I realized it is about you, oh, this changes everything. To fix the pleasure gap, we have to encourage not only like self-love practices or self-pleasure, masturbating, we also need to encourage a safe and secure communication between people.
Hmm.
Like some days, especially this goes for like PCOS also, some days you're going to feel very hot, like you're going to feel spicy and you're going to want to go for it. Like, let's do
You're
it.
ovulating. Let's go. Yep.
And
Yeah.
some days you may not be feeling it at all.
Mhm.
But however, again, we feel that if we speak our truth, there's a risk.
Yeah.
And there's a risk like, I'm going to disappoint them. They're going to leave me. And I'm here to let you know that those aren't true. And by speaking your truth, you're only setting yourself up to be closer to your authentic self. And if they don't respect your truth, then they're not meant to be in your life in the first place.
No. No, and even if it's an unsafe situation where you're worried about maybe a violent or hurtful reaction to a no or consent, I mean, that's a whole nother layer of issue, but that is also a sign that, oh, maybe things need to change.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. It's going to be saying no or expressing, as you learn along your journey, like what feels good and you start to recognize these thought patterns. The first time you actually like, I would say like when you fully step into your power and either you say no or you're like, you know what? I actually really would enjoy if you would go down on me more, or can we use some lubricant? The first time you say it, it's going to feel like a weight off the chest.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the more you say yes, like yes, the
Yeah.
more just think about it, the more you say yes because it feels expansive and exciting and orgasmic, then the more you're up leveling. We talked about it earlier. Like it's now like you and I are in a point where like we love ourselves and we, have developed this new relationship so that we can create these experiences with other people.
Yes, definitely. So let's go back to the self-love piece. So you even talked about other experiences with like personal intimacy, like just even sensations, just doing normal things around our home or being out in nature and enjoying, a good blade of grass against your skin, all these things, right? So how does a woman go about starting? What are some of the tools that you teach women with your practice and your coaching?
So this is, I smile because it's my favorite thing to do. I assign homework. And in my containers, we have offline accountability. So there's always follow up. I'm like always checking in.
Yeah.
So what I what I encourage is we do have I give them like digital downloads to work and like a lot of tracking. And one of the best things to do is to set up a timer or an alarm, and we will add notes to it, with like the affirmations or the activities that you need. At
Mhm.
the same time, I've seen more, um, and it just depends on like how people learn best. Um, but we definitely encourage a lot of like implementing self-love activities into your personal calendar and blocking the time, marking it as busy. And I call it, it's your date night, date nights or your self-care of the day. Like I mentioned self-love on Sundays, and
Mhm.
before, like I love working, I enjoy my job, but also I need to restore my energy, and Sunday is my day.
Yes.
I
Yes.
also, for anyone listening, I highly encourage like setting yourself up for a date, and you don't have to do it at night, it could be as simple as like your date for, you know, I say this like start with once a week. And you might be like, well, I'm surprised. You should do it every day. I promise you, I work with a lot of people who are workaholics. They're mothers, they've got lots of hats. So you have to ease yourself into the process, because when you do get to the point where you plan the date, like it's easy to put in the calendar, it's easy to set the reminder, and we can get excited. Then comes the moment where you have to show up. It's like going on a date. You need to be there. And um, we start with something as simple as, go to your favorite cafe, go to the bookstore. We mentioned going outside, and you mentioned grass, going for a walk and being fully present. And that's where, I'll encourage them to bring journals with them, or some use the audio on their phones to write voice memos, because a lot of things are going to come up. One, it feels hella awkward.
Yeah.
People are not used to being by themselves, especially like just being, like for my mother clients, like if the kids are like, now the kids are in school, but when they go out intentionally for them, and not to like pick up stuff like picking up diapers at the, Target, it
Mhm.
is sitting in the cafe, sipping that coffee, and suddenly recognizing like, how lovely is this? And it's hard in the beginning, but start with once a week, adding an activity that excites you the most. And I say coffee shops and, even little dinner dates. Like that was one of the things I did for myself. And
Mhm.
it really did change the way I saw myself, because before I used to expect this from other people. I expected, my partner to take me out all the time.
Yes.
I was finally independent, and I took myself out to dinner one night. I was very nervous and embarrassed. I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. But now I thrive. Like I go into the room like, hello, I'm here for my
Yeah.
reservation party at
I'll have my
one.
usual table, please. Yeah.
Right? Like it creates more confidence in yourself, because you're willing to hold space for yourself, which is something that it's not normal. We've forgotten that we're allowed to do this,
We
but
should. Yes.
you should. And by doing so, you're going to create more space and more desire to do that for others. Because over time, as we keep feeding ourselves out and, supporting others and saying yes to things that really don't resonate, we build resentment. And that's where we're seeing issues in the relationships.
Yes. And so much of that is like intimacy is especially with another person, it's the ability to communicate what we need. But if we don't know what we need and like in the first place, which is exactly what you've been saying all along, it's impossible to expect somebody else to that has a completely different set of needs or perspectives or ideas, right? And they're not mind readers, unfortunately. I when I was going through some of my healing work, that was exactly what I did. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. Because I set a goal to go on one, I had to go out once a week. If I had to go out once a week outside of my house and do something at least with myself. Most of the time it was with myself. Um, and at first, again, weird. I even went to like concerts and movies, and I just all the things that I wanted to do that I always felt like I couldn't do because my partner didn't want to do them or whatever. Now is the time to be like, well, what's holding you back now? Right? So I did that. And at first it was really awkward, but then it got really fun. And then all of a sudden people are like, hey, isn't that weird? I'm like, no, I'm great company. I like myself. And now it's funny because now even I'm careful sometimes when I go to do something I really love, I'm very careful about who I invite because I want to make sure the vibe is right, right? Like some of
You
these
start,
places,
you're
I'm like,
creating
no.
more awareness about what is like, to be honest, like what's worth your energy. Because quality time, you can't get that back. You can get the tickets refunded if you want to, but the people you spend time with are going to be very important.
Yes, yes. I love that. That's really great. Yes, date yourself. Absolutely. Treat yourself. It's an old Dr. Phil thing. I'm not the biggest fan of Dr. Phil, but teach people the way you want to be treated. And it starts with how you treat you. Definitely, it is an attractive state when someone is really um aware of how to take care of themselves, like really take care of themselves. So that's wonderful. Thank you. How can people find you if they want to come work with you or learn more about what you do?
You can check out my website. It's theselflovescientist.com. And if the website for some reason hiccups or you're like, what did she say? You can reach me on Instagram. I'm at Victoria_Icenhower. And then you can always shoot me an email and I'd be happy to send that your way and put it in the notes.
Yes, I'll put everything in the show notes. Absolutely. Are there any other thoughts or ideas or, words of encouragement that you would like to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. As you can probably tell, I'm very passionate and I get very excited when it comes to intimacy, self-love. And again, like part of my purpose for starting this was because at some point in my life, there was a lack. And I'm here to tell you, like, in the beginning, it's very tough. It's really hard to suddenly, have that desire to change because you're fighting up against a lot of stuff that, people were only sharing what they knew, what was normal for them. So to
Yeah.
be that person to create change does create a lot of discomfort. And I'm here to let you know that it does get easier with the right resources, the communities. There's a lot of things that there are a lot of tools that are available that will completely change the way you see yourself. And I think one of the most profound things I have found with human beings, like we said it earlier, we're meant to evolve. The best way you can grow is through being vulnerable. And you
Mhm.
have to learn how to give yourself the permission to like really tap in and feel that. Because, we live in a society where it's like, well, you're supposed like for this is shout out for the guys, you gotta man up. And then for the ladies, be quiet and it's not working. It's not doing us any justice. It's not doing well for our relationships, whether it's intimate or even for the relationships you have with kids. Like kids are smart, they pick up on that.
They
And
do.
that's, that's kind of why I started it because I thoroughly believe that everybody is worthy and deserving of experiencing love to like there's no capacity for that.
Mm. No limits. No
No.
limits to love. I agree. Thank you so much for your time, Victoria. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you, and I hope that we get a chance to do this again.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Chrissy.